Let's get a check now of the top business news stories. Our business editor, Kate Moody's here. Hi there, Kate. Now, another day, another controversy surrounding Elon Musk and Twitter. This time, it's about how Twitter defines media outlets.
Yeah, so Twitter has begun labeling some media accounts in what it says is an effort to be more transparent for its users. So the Russian propaganda platform RT, for example, has been tagged as a state-affiliated media. Now, America's NPR had gotten that same label, although after protest over the weekend, it was switched to government-funded media. But NPR has said that it will stop posting to its official accounts now in protest, saying that that label undermines its credibility with false information. Officially called National Public Radio, the company says only about 1% of its overall budget now comes from federal funding. The rest is public support from listeners as well as private advertisers. NPR is the first major news organization to say it will quit Twitter over these changes. The BBC had also pushed back at its government-funded tag, and in an interview on that UK broadcaster this Wednesday, owner Elon Musk said he would change the BBC's label to publicly funded media. This could just be the beginning of a broader dispute between Musk and media outlets around the world. It is worth reminding our viewers that France 24 is largely funded by the French government, but it remains editorially independent.
Slashing gas emissions and transforming the U.S. auto industry one way or another. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has unveiled tough new proposals.
A little bit of a technical mishap there. We are moving on now to this story about the United States tightening its rules on car emissions in line with the Biden administration's broader climate goals. Environmental regulators have outlined proposals that would force manufacturers to shift to less polluting engines. Clemence Waller has this.
Slashing gas emissions and transforming the U.S. auto industry one way or another. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has unveiled tough new proposals for vehicle emission limits. The most aggressive would force car makers to make 67% of their U.S. sales from electric models by 2032.
Together, today's actions will accelerate our ongoing transition to a clean vehicles future, tackle the climate crisis head-on, and improve air quality for communities all across the country.
However, the ambitious proposal may face pushback from the auto industry, as legacy manufacturers such as General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis have already pledged to make between 40 to 50% of their U.S. sales electric by 2030. Furthermore, car manufacturers could struggle to meet the government goals, as the American market is slow in leaving internal combustion engines behind. In 2021, electric vehicles made up 3.2% of new vehicle sales, 5.8% in 2022, and 7.2% in the first quarter of 2023. The consulting firm LMC Automotive said new EV sales could reach 49% in 2032, but are unlikely to go above that, citing high prices for EVs compared with gas-powered cars. The EU, meanwhile, is pushing its own ambitious emission strategy. It will ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035. Analysts on both sides of the Atlantic have warned that the shift to electric faces a number of challenges, such as the lack of availability of public and private EV charging stations and access to raw materials to produce batteries.
Inflation in the United States is falling to its lowest level in nearly 2 years, but it remains a very real challenge for American households, businesses, and policymakers. Consumer prices were 5% higher in March than a year earlier, a significant easing from the 6% rate recorded in February. But core inflation, which removes volatile food and energy prices from calculations, increased slightly, 5.6% year on year. That means that prices for many goods and services remain under pressure and aren't necessarily responding to the tightening of monetary policy. The U.S. Federal Reserve has raised interest rates 9 times over the past year as it tries to get inflation closer to its 2% goal. The lower house of Switzerland's parliament has delivered a stinging, if symbolic, rebuke to the government's rescue package for Credit Suisse. Lawmakers voted 103 to 71 against the government's $120 billion worth of guarantees for UBS after its hasty takeover of Credit Suisse. The upper house had already approved the aid, and Wednesday's vote will not overturn the deal. The Swiss parliament is on the second of a 3-day hearing into the circumstances of the bank's collapse last month, as well as the emergency merger. Lawmakers in Chile have approved a new law to gradually reduce the standard work week from 45 to 40 hours. Many companies had already said they would adopt the changes, but some smaller businesses say they don't have enough resources to hire more workers in order to replace those lost hours. Yuka Royer has more.
Cheers and applause in the Chilean Congress as a bill to shrink the work week was passed with an overwhelming majority, with 127 votes for and just 14 against.
What we saw today is that although some thought it was impossible to make progress towards a better quality of life for the workers of our country, yes, it can be done.
It's a breakthrough for workers' rights in Chile and a hard-fought victory for the new left-leaning government. The bill, which will gradually reduce the work week from 45 to 40 hours over 5 years, had stalled in Congress since it was first introduced by communist lawmakers in 2017. Those opposing it cited a lack of measures to make up for lost working hours.
I asked the minister what she's doing to increase employment in Chile. There's not a single government project to generate more jobs for Chileans.
The law will prevent employers from reducing salaries because of the change. It will also allow workers to switch to a 4-day work week, something that countries like Spain and the UK are already testing, producing generally positive results on workers' health and productivity.
It's good because people will have more time for the family or find another source of income to increase their purchasing power.
However, the measure does not apply to the more than 27% of Chile's workforce that is employed in the informal sector.
The IMF World Bank spring meetings continue in Washington, and the bank is facing growing calls to reform the way it tackles development and poverty issues. In particular, the presumed next president of the World Bank, Ajay Banga, will be under pressure to put climate change at the heart of its mandate. I've been speaking to the World Bank's Senior Managing Director, Axel von Schotzenberg.
What the last couple of years have shown is that global crises are impacting poverty and the development process. Take, for example, COVID, that has set us back in terms of poverty reduction, but also climate change is impacting the entire world and also the development process. Look at the desertification in the Sahel zone, for example, or these terrible floods in Pakistan.
The rest of that interview is on this week's People and Profit. That's on our website now, Tom.
Okay, I'll look out for that. Thank you very much indeed. Our business editor, Kate Moody, thank you so much. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.